So I'm going to give you 5 key takeaways. And it's taken me a while to kind of come to these, but every time I do this presentation, I want you to walk out of here and shave 5 years off your coaching careers. 5 years, not your careers, but 5 years help your learning. Because I've made a lot of mistakes over the last 20 years, and what I try to do now is give coaches that are just getting started in their first 5 years a 5-year head start. Because there's going to be a lot of mistakes you're going to make down the path, and what I'm hearing through the grapevine is the average coaching career of a volunteer coach now is only 5 years. So if you're going to get into coaching, let's try to get you into coaching as quickly as possible and do the right thing. Number one thing that you need to do is you have to make it fun. Kids are playing because it's fun, they're quitting because it's not. If you remember the video I played earlier in the presentation from New Zealand, this is the icon version. This is when members of the All Blacks talk about why they played sports and what they loved about it and what they disliked. It's the most winning sport organization in the world. They've had over a 70% winning percentage the last 100 years. In the last 10 years, under the direction of Steve Hansen, who is on this video, they have over 80% winning percentage. They're the bar that everybody is starting to follow. And if they are answering this like this, then maybe we should pay attention.
I played for a little club called Tory down in Otago.
Kuro Rugby Club.
Scorpions training grounds in Ngāti Aotearoa.
Marist, based in Mount Albert in Auckland.
Jury Rugby Club.
Tapukura Seagulls Rugby League Club.
In a club called Taniwharau.
Burnside Rugby Club.
Marist St Michael's. Tākea Rugby Club.
Ngā Iwi Primary School.
Called Tokoro Rugby Club.
Playing with my friends and seeing my mum and dad there supporting me.
Having fun, laughing about, and then having a plate of food afterwards, you know.
Often falling over and grazing my knees on the frost.
Playing my first game and getting smashed all the time and crying, you know. And I said, oh, where are those tears coming from?
Waking up and going with my mates to rugby and then hanging out for the rest of the day.
Hanging out with your friends was far more important than any result that we ever had.
It was just about having fun.
Enjoying with my mates and showing my parents that I could really play.
We always wanted to go out there and play hard and have a good time.
The fun factor and the enjoyment factor of it was the main thing and why I play the game and still do.
You always remember the loudmouth parent that would stand on the sideline and have a crack at the ref or their own son. And I remember as a young fella thinking, I'm so pleased my dad's not embarrassing me like that.
Some of the stuff was like, kill him, or, that was pretty crap to hear from the sideline, was, people shouting out, kill him.
Sometimes it was at the players and sometimes it was, between parents squabbling with each other. I think as a coach, you've got to, whether it's with young kids or with the All Blacks, you've got a responsibility to turn them into better people.
We're out there to support them, not to criticise them, and just let them have fun.
Coming from a father's perspective, knowing how much I love my child, we got to let kids be kids and take a step back from that and understand that everyone else loves their kids just as much.
Go up to the parent and tell them to take a breath, and maybe explain to them why they're there.
Try not to ruin the experience of fun for the kids. Let kids be kids.
It's not about you at all. So just turn up, support them, be hearty.
They're going out there to do their best. They want to enjoy the occasion. So I think just letting the kids be kids is the best thing to do.
Steve Hansen, one of the best coaches in the world, says it doesn't matter whether you're coaching youth or you're coaching the All Blacks. Your job as a coach is to develop them into better people. The number 2 takeaway I want to leave with you is the importance to make it safe from all forms of harassment. The study was done and posted in True Sport Report in 2008. 38% of the responses said the most serious issue facing youth sport today was harassment. I've had the misfortune of dealing with various forms of harassment to nip it in the bud. Bully, cyberbully, sexual harassment, we've heard through the grapevine, is starting to become prevalent because girls are starting to play with boys, and hazing. There is no reason why any of that should be in sport. And we need to eliminate that. And as a coach, I've always had a zero tolerance for any forms of harassment. The second issue that's facing sport, intolerance and racism. How can that be the case when our whole society is multicultural and yet we're still not including various all kids an opportunity to play sport. Again, what comes up? Lack of fair play. Injuries was the fourth serious issue. Probably, and I suspect because of overuse injuries from early sports specialization. And the fifth, focus on winning and competition. We need to bring the game back to the kids. Teach skills. I'm a big believer in teaching the skills of the game, but also the skills of life. It's not sport that develops character. Everybody uses that acronym. It's the coaches in sport that develop character. Good coaches teach life skills, life lessons, like respect. See in the video that respect, and we lose the game. We've lost that in a lot of sport. And I think it's really important we reinforce the message where kids are respecting themselves, but also their teammates, their coaches, the other teams, the other team coaches, the other team parents, their parents, scorekeepers, timekeepers. The list just goes on and on. And what about the simple thing like thank you? I want all of my players, not necessarily to thank me, but to thank all the assistant coaches on my teams because they're volunteering after every practice, after every game. It's just a little thing, but it goes a long way. You heard earlier in the presentation about Alberta lacrosse. One of the reasons why kids were quitting was poor sportsmanship. And that's just driving me crazy how I see how often excessive celebrations when teams are way up or poor losers that are throwing their sticks or going on a rant because they lost a game. One of the greatest life lessons I learned from my football coach, who took us to the provincials twice. We won once and we lost in the last game the second time, was I want you to win with humility and lose with dignity. No one should ever know when you leave the field whether you won or lost. That was probably one of the greatest life lessons I ever learned, and I was only 15, 16 years old at the time. There's a whole bunch of other ones you could cover, but that's really important. I've surveyed thousands of coaches now in clinics, and I've asked them every time I run a clinic to tell me, what are the top characteristics of the greatest coach or teacher you ever had. Time and time again, the number one answer is when the coach cared about them as an individual, when they connected to them as an individual. That was the number one reason. And right in behind that was how much how passionate they were about the sport, how they instilled the love of the game so that they came back year after year after year. Those are the top two. If you do that, you'll do all right. One of my favorite quotes pertaining to caring is one of the greatest presidents the U.S. ever had, Teddy Roosevelt. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Last but not least, don't be a kid's last coach. It's impossible for us to make a living as youth coaches because the majority are volunteers. 90% of coaches are volunteers. So I learned last year when I was at a conference, Dr. Jerry Lynch, who was a key speaker under John O'Sullivan was doing a Way of Champions conference, and he came up there and he shared with us that he didn't have a job. He wasn't making a living, even though he's one of the top sports psychologists in the U.S. He said, but what my role and your role as coaches is to make a difference. That's your role. That's what your purpose, your calling in life is to make a difference by developing youth into adults. And when he said it and how he said it, the light bulb went off. I never thought of it in that perspective, but as soon as I started thinking of that way, that's our role. That's our job as coaches, is develop youth into adults. Please ensure that the legacy that you leave behind is not the same as some of the coaches I talked about earlier in the presentation, but that you leave a positive legacy behind and you're not a kid's last coach. Thank you.